Are they worth it? Let's go to...
Not yet.
You should have asked me that question.
Not at the moment.
Let's
No.
at this point go to Auckland Correspondent Todd Niall.
Well, I'm joined by Stella Muller, who's an entrepreneur from South Auckland, and Simon Wilson, editor-at-large of Metro magazine. I guess I'd quite like to go straight to the discussion about South Auckland, because that's something I've never heard any of them discuss before. In the Southern Initiative, which was one of the big strategic initiatives of the council back in the early days, 2010, 2011, and has kind of faded. Stella, you're a passionate advocate for the possibilities of the South. Were you inspired by what you heard?
Yeah, I think I was pleasantly surprised by some of the commentary that came through. I mean, obviously, as a South Auckland resident, as someone who lives, works and has a business in South Auckland, my thing is really about what are we going to do to unlock the potential of South Auckland. And often we get looked at as a community where we've got to go in and fix things, but I think that really the approach is like recognising the value that we can bring to the Auckland brand, to the economic discussion, and yeah, that's what I want to hear.
But do you think they were communicating how they as a mayor and how they as a council could make a difference? That's what it's all about.
Oh, I think that's right. I was... They know it's an issue, but you're quite right, it isn't an issue that they've been talking about much in the campaign. I spent some time in Tangaroa College this year, which is a Decile 1 school in Otara, and it's pretty typical of the sorts of problems that are faced in the South. It's a very good school. They have a good first 15, they have good academic record, they have good cultural record. I spent some time with their big sing choir, really exciting stuff. One of the problems they have, of course, is that everybody who's any good at Tangaroa College, someone comes knocking and offers them a scholarship. There are 16,000 students in the south of Auckland who bus out of the area every day to go to a so-called better school. That is devastating for the region. And that kind of thing, the idea that we'll fix Auckland's problems in the poverty areas by just taking out the best and brightest, has to be rethought. There is so much more work that needs to be done on the Southern Initiative. It's great that they started talking about it, but there's a lot more. Council does need to own it in the political sense of saying we will lead government, non-government agencies and everybody else in this.
But there must be things that the council can do in the short term to ease what you've called the daily grind.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's obviously, I mean, what I was keen to hear today was some of the high-level aspirational concepts that our candidates have for South Auckland. But on a physical and daily grind level, I mean, I know as a South Auckland resident that there are obvious differences between our parks and some of our facilities compared to other parts of Auckland. And often when we have to think about where we want to have Sunday lunch or do something special, we're often getting in the cars and don't go down to One Tree Hill or to Mission Bay. We don't have... I would really like to see more investment in our parks. I mean, in the summer, I took my children down to our local park, Ngāti Otara, down in South Auckland, and you go for a walk on the tracks, and my poor father, who has walked every day for the last 20 years on that track, can no longer walk on the track. He's got to walk on the grass because they're not fixed. Our parks, sure, there have been some developments with the parks and all of that in terms of playground facilities, but there's obvious differences, and I would really like to make South Auckland a place where I love to live by having some of those physical assets developed in our community.
Simon, one of the things that fascinated me was particularly Phil Goff and Vic Crone were actually kind of knowledgeable about the Southern Initiative and talked about it, and yet we've never really heard them talk about this stuff on the campaign trail. Is this politically risky for them, do you think, to go big on?
Well, I think one of the reasons for that is that the campaign trail itself is dominated by the Residents and Ratepayers Association, to have their annual general meetings, and they all over the suburbs of Auckland, except in the south and to a degree in the west as well. So in the eastern suburbs, in the central isthmus area and up north, there have been a whole series of meetings, and these are people who tend to be elderly, they tend to be Pākehā, they tend to be fairly wealthy, and they vote. They really tend to vote. So they are, in terms of the public campaign, they are skewing the perception of what the public campaign's all about. And that is an issue for politics in Auckland. Younger people, people who are not Pākehā, are not participating in anything like the same numbers in the whole process.
Because I guess a bit of political courage is going to be needed from a leader to stand up and say, look, Auckland, we actually need to invest more here to help the whole region.
I really like the point that Vic made around we as New Zealand are the fourth or fifth most diverse country in the world, and I really like the point that she made about being a champion of a city of inclusiveness. I mean, the day that Aucklanders can say that they identify as their identity being part of a multicultural, diverse city, it's got to be a good thing. But at the moment, we need our leaders and to champion that, to champion inclusiveness and diversity, and perhaps that's the reason why you see some of this segmented view in the community, because there's a work to be done around that, to celebrating that. And on that very note, I mean, I think one of the things that differentiates Auckland from the world is that we are the biggest Polynesian city in the world. I'd really like to have all Aucklanders own that, not just Pacific people, all Aucklanders, because that's uniquely something that we can all be proud of.
The other interesting thing was the Maori representation issue, where there was a wee bit of shuffling going on there, wasn't there? I mean, I guess I'd be interested to know from Phil Goff, was that a yes or no?
Yes, it wasn't quite a yes, was it?
It was one would be better than the other.
That's right, yes. Actual representation, voting for councillors was better than the alternative, and Phil said that, but he didn't actually say, I think, clearly that he would be advocating it. I wish he would. I wish they all would. It's obviously the more democratic option, and we have got into serious trouble politically this year with council, with people complaining about non-democratically elected representatives.
We need to go back to Guy in a minute, but here's the hard question. How would you rate them? Give them a score out of 10.
Okay, so I would give Phil an 8 out of 10. I'd give Vic an 8 out of 10. John probably a 6, and Mark there a 7. Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things is that there's some real big shifts that have happened. There's a lot of consensus among the candidates. If you take out
transport.
That's right. Transport in particular is interesting. They're all talking about public transport. Nobody's talking about building more motorways or roads. Everybody's talking about public transport. The debate is how to fund it. So I think that the numbers that Stella mentioned, that's pretty much my call too.
Very good. Simon Wilson, editor-at-large from Metro Magazine. Stella Muller, South Auckland entrepreneur, and thanks for being with us, and back to Guyon.
Thank you very much, Todd. And we've only got a minute, so just to clarify that, Phil Goff, because I don't like to leave things hanging. You did say, didn't you, that you would advocate for Māori seats on the council?
I said, I'll repeat it very clearly, that I would prefer to have elected Māori seats than appointed seats.
On the council?
I will make that point to the Minister,
right.
Yes.
A quick final word from you, Vic Crone, why people should vote for you when the ballot papers come in?
Yeah, it's the breadth of experience I bring across business, government, private and social enterprise, and fresh. I think it's time for some fresh ideas for our city, and we need to elect a leader that embodies the change that we want to see and we deserve.
John Polino, you can promise, can you, that it won't be Polinoville, this new city that you build?
No, look, it's not going to be Polinoville, but it's going to be a great city. We have the opportunity to actually build up Auckland to be an amazing, great city and to be wealthy, filled with culture. We're an international city. We should be a cultural city, and that's what we need to be doing here.
Mark Thomas, a quick final word from you.
I want to deliver an Auckland that works, to make more progress on the things that are holding us back, the housing and the transport. I've got 6 years of deep understanding of Auckland Council, 20 years of complex business experience, and I know the local politicians. So those three things, I think, give us the best chance of delivering an Auckland that works, cracking the housing affordability issue, and getting better public transport.
All right, that's about all we have time for this morning. Can I thank you, our guests, the mayoral candidates Phil Goff, Vic Crone, John Polino and Mark Thomas. Our audience here at AUT, remember it has been a joint venture with AUT and RNZ, and of course you at home watching and listening.
The North Island robin, Tautau Wai. RNZ National.